That brings us to the top 10. I went Davis over Brunson. Davis was just out of this world. Even during some of the Olympic stretches we saw him, I still think he's one of the best defenders in the world, and he's putting up 24 and 12 or whatever he does. I think he's so impressive at this stage, despite all the injuries he's gone through. Curry, Durant, those guys are in very similar places, so old at this point, but they're still keeping up out of this world production, which we saw in the Olympics too from those guys. I'll give Tatum the benefit of the doubt over them. As you see, he's here at 5, just based on their ages, the trajectory, the defense certainly here too that Tatum has shown. But those two are still much more consistent and dominant offensive forces than what we've seen from Tatum here. I think Tatum gets them, and I do buy into the width of his impact. So I was pretty generous to Tatum here. I feel like putting him at 5, and that's, when he's at his peak, when he's playing at the level he can and the level I expect him to. I think he's squarely the 5th best player in the league. Some would argue Embiid over him. Embiid was the MVP the last 2 years before the injuries, and even on one leg, I still thought he played out of this world last year, but Tatum has beaten him so many times, and Embiid's fallen so flat in the playoffs that Tatum gets the nod over him in my mind. And yes, I'm going 7 for Wembanyama. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year almost automatically if he does what he did last year at more minutes, more impact, more strength coming off the offseason. We just saw what he did against Team USA almost single-handedly, trying to drive them to a win there, France. And I think the offense is going to take a real step too. If he's hitting threes this year, Noah, he's going to be first team All-NBA. Everything else is there in my mind. There's some facilitating questions, and certainly the team around him isn't great, which I think hurts him. But after what we saw him do in his first season, trying to get his feet under him, trying to figure out the NBA, probably being a little skinny, all that stuff. I mean, he put up 21, 10, 4 assists, a steal a game, 3.6 blocks per game. And per 36, he was 26, 13, 5 with 4 blocks a game. And that's shooting 32% from 3. If that's 33, 35, 37, forget about it. He's going to be number 1 soon on this list. And this year, I think he's going to get up to 7. And then you got your Shea, Luka, Giannis, Jokic, who were the bona fide MVP candidates last year. Thoughts?
My biggest one is I think just Luka's too high. I think you just have to take into account defensively the liability that he is. And, most of these other stars in that position wouldn't have allowed the Celtics to go up 3-0 I thought that his defense was like a major reason why that happened. And that has to be, 50% of the game, right? So if we preach that, I think he's just ranked too high on here. Wemby startled me a little. I didn't expect him to be a ranked 7th, just because he was on such a massively losing team last year that you think a top 7 guy almost but single-handedly could make that record be better, but he really had an abysmal cast around him, and I don't think they set him up for success, so it's hard to fault him. Was a little surprised Anthony Davis. Honestly, I'm really feeling clouded by the Olympics right now, because even just seeing Steph and Durant, I'm like, those are the 2 best players in the world. Like, what are we doing here? Because they were so, those 2 and LeBron really looked like the 3 best players, right? And so it's hard to reckon like the Steph that we just saw take over and essentially win Olympic gold, and a Steph that we know is going to be on the decline next year. So you probably have those 2 in the right spot. I still think Wemby's a little high. I don't know. He looked great in the Olympics. He had some big moments, but we haven't seen him be able to be like a guy willing his team to victory in the NBA yet. So
I'm anticipating a real leap at 21 with Chris Paul and with just the comfort of knowing what he was able to do last year and going out and doing it. I think his confidence is at a high level right now, and a lot of it is going to be the shooting. If it's there, he's on this level. If it's not, he's probably more in the teens or high 20s. So he's definitely top 25. There's no doubt about that right now to me, but I'm projecting a massive leap for Wembanyama this year. And already led the league in blocks, already was, 2nd last year in Defensive Player of the Year. So the defense is there at this level. Now is the offense going to follow? I thought he already did a lot in limited minutes last year on offense too. So we'll see. It's a high bar. It's going to be tough to reach this echelon, and the team's still pretty shaky. But I think he can do it, especially as some of these other guys age here and maybe deal with injuries and some other stuff. I hope he continues to stay healthy too with that body.
Yeah.
That's still the big concern here. But Noa Dalzell, thanks for stopping by. We'll talk a little bit longer here and tell you about one of our sponsors, but Noa's got to run. Check out her work on sbnation.com and the You Got Boston podcast multiple times a week here on CLNS Media. Thanks, Noa.
Thanks, Bobby.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.